Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another lore video. And today we are talking about one of my favorite things in the Star Wars universe, the unknown regions. And specifically, elements of legends that have been reincorporated into canon, including the idea of some great galactic barrier, and how all of that plays into the Rise of Skywalker and the developing lore around the Sith. So much of today's information comes from the Rise of Skywalker, but especially the visual dictionary and also some older sources like the Aftermath trilogy. So as I've talked about in prior videos from quite some time ago, both Legends and canon have had this idea that there is some thing which prevents travel throughout certain parts of the Star Wars galaxy. Initially, canon called it disturbances, but with the visual dictionary, for example, they've now moved to using the term barrier, and here's a quote. A cosmic bramble of hyperspace anomalies has long prevented exploration along the galaxy's western edge, with a precipitous drop-off of known worlds beyond the western reaches. This barely understood barrier is as old as galactic civilization and hyperdrive technology. Rare exploratory missions have found some navigable worlds in this space, Scylla, Ilum, and Rakata Prime, for example, that are reachable by cautiously stepped hyperspace jumps into the wilderness. So what we get in the visual dictionary is basically the expansion of an idea that first appeared in canon in Aftermath Empire's End. Basically, as you travel, especially outside of the galaxy, navigation becomes very, very difficult, if not impossible. However, this book takes it even closer to how the barrier was portrayed in Legends, where it's also described as a sort of anomaly or phenomenon that actually stops travel past a certain point. Legends dealt with this in a few different examples. We have projects like the Outbound Flight, which tried to find a way through the barrier. We also have instances where the Yuuzhan Vong, for example, found their way through at Vector Prime. And with all that, the source or reason for the barrier was unknown. It's unclear whether it was a natural phenomena or whether, as suggested in one occasion, it was perhaps produced by the Celestials to help contain some sort of threat. Canon 2 has been very, very mysterious when it comes to this barrier. It's unclear whether it's natural or somehow created, perhaps by an ancient force entity, some civilization, or something else. I mean, notably, the visual dictionary, for example, says that it's existed since the time of the first hyperdrive, but if it was a stellar phenomenon, for example, I think that would be obvious. The visual dictionary also plays very heavily into cartography and force-based navigation. We see that appear sort of esoterically with different theorems related to the world between worlds or vergence points of some type, but the Ramagon, an ancient Jedi text, also has within hyperspatial points that lead somewhat to Exegol. I think it's abundantly clear that something is happening in the unknown regions, or has been happening. Perhaps it's something relatively simple, like the existence of the Sith Eternal Cult on Exegol, i.e. the group that Palpatine probably co-opted when creating his final order. We know that Exegol, being extraordinarily difficult to find, was basically a bastion for the Sith, the one final place they could reside in secret even when the rest of the galaxy was hostile to them. However, I think it might be more than just that, and I turn now to some quotes from Star Wars Aftermath Empire's End. That book is the first, I think, in new canon which deals with Palpatine's obsession with the unknown regions and the area outside the Star Wars galaxy. The following contains some of what I think to be the most interesting ideas in the new Star Wars canon, and is one of my favorite passages from all of new canon, just because of the interesting ideas that it sets up. Palpatine said that this galaxy was to be his, but that it was only one among many. Again, that phrase arose, the unexplored infinity. The computers here have long been searching for a way through the storms and the black spaces. Slowly, surely, they had been putting together a map, a journey into chaos. The Empire had sent probe droids to test the computations, as the computers have made them. Many never returned, but some kept reporting in, pinging the transponder here. Every droid that made it further contributed to the map, and with distance achieved, the computers, through the scanning droids, continued to chart the course and compute the next branches of navigation. This is where it gets interesting. Before Palpatine's demise at the hands of the rebels, the computers finished their calculations, finally finding a way through the unknown. The Emperor was convinced that something waited for him out there, some origin of the Force, some dark presence formed of malevolent substance. He said he could feel the waves of it radiating out now that the way was clear. The Emperor called it a signal, conveniently one that only he could hear. Aside from that, the book also talks about how difficult it is to pass through this barrier, although that word wasn't really used back then. But the real takeaway here, I think, is some source of darkness calling to Palpatine from the unknown regions. Now, when this book came out and after episode 7, I think a lot of us thought that this was meant to be Snoke, and to be fair, we are now applying retroactive logic to this. That doesn't really fly anymore, given Snoke seems to have been a pure creation of Palpatine, at least to some extent. Either way, his status as a dark side Force user has certainly been diminished by The Last Jedi and Episode 9. So we have a barrier of unknown origin, one which even Palpatine is only able to navigate through basically brute force and likely millions of probe droids. We have a dark side Force calling to Palpatine from the unknown, and in Episode 9 we now have the reveal of a new Sith stronghold, the Sith Eternal, and of course the resurrection of Palpatine himself. Add to that the fact that Thrawn and Ezra disappeared probably into the unknown regions, and just the absolute focus that the area has been getting in Star Wars canon, and I think it's pretty clear that something is going on out here. All of that makes a supposed inside scoop about the upcoming Project Luminous much more interesting. Now, this is just an alleged leak, but there could be spoilers for an upcoming Star Wars multimedia project, so if you want to click away, I'll give you a second to do so. Anyway, a supposed informant for Project Luminous has said that it will be a multi-platform story set 300 to 400 years before the Skywalker saga, involving a group of Jedi setting out to explore the then unknown regions of the galaxy. And I mean, that's all we got. It's certainly not reliable, but given what we've talked about today, it's an interesting possibility and a story that I personally would be very excited to see. This all helps a new Thrawn prequel trilogy, which we know is coming, also make a bit more sense. I mean, the Chiss ascendancy is interesting, but on its face, I don't see how that warrants 3 books. However, if there is something going on in the unknown regions, i.e. where the Chiss ascendancy live, then perhaps that's a way that trilogy is able to connect to the larger saga and the larger expanded universe. Another option is that the malevolent presence will be simply ascribed to the Sith Eternal, which I think would be fine. But another thing I want to talk about is the idea of Palpatine's Wayfinder, given the fact that Aftermath Empire's End talks about him actually finding the routes through the unknown region, especially with the help of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Hey, there's a callback to what we were just talking about. I wonder whether they'll eventually say that he was the one who created the Wayfinder found in his throne room. Either way, I'm kind of getting away from the general purpose of this video, which admittedly is unclear even to me, but I think it's exciting that we're really going to dig deep, at least in my opinion, into the unknown regions in the coming months and years in Star Wars canon. I always loved books like The Outbound Flight, and exploring the unknown, as long as it's not overdone, has always been really fun for me. I love that idea of Project Luminous, whether it's true or not, but either way, I hope we find out more about this strange hyperspace barrier, whether it was constructed by somebody or is a natural part of the galaxy. I hope we find out more about Palpatine's journey into the unknown, whether he found that dark entity there, whether it was the Sith Eternal or something else, and hey, how that faction even operated before being discovered by Palpatine, and there's just really a lot to go through here. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Guys, it's 4 in the morning and I want to finish recording this before bed, so you'll have to excuse me for skipping out on another hashtag AskEck question of the day today. But if you want me to answer a quick question at the end of a video, leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck, subscribe and turn notification bells on, and you never know, I might get to yours. Anyway guys, that's all I have for today. Have a great one, and as always, may the Force be with you.